Something most people go through at some point in their life is consciously separating themselves from everyone else, while also wanting to fit in and be liked. It's a difficult balancing act of having an outlined personality, taste and style, but also making sure not to stray too far from everyone else, to where you're disliked or seen as weird. For me, this started as I began to leave high school and become an adult. I would start to expand my taste in music, build a wardrobe of clothes that spoke to me, redecorate my room, basically anything that told people who I was. And honestly, this is a great process. I'd start to notice certain things spoke to me more than others. I'd invest time and energy into art, whether making my own or looking at other people's. If you haven't ever consciously expanded your world through art like this, I'd highly recommend it. You can do this with practically any type of art, and it's probably best to start dipping your toes in as much as possible to see what you like. This could be something as simple as music, movies or books, or more niche expressions, such as knitting or collecting Funko Pops if that's your thing. It can really be anything, and it's one of the best ways to start figuring out who you are. At the same time though, this very common form of self-discovery comes with its own caveats. I mean, to start with, you're intaking all of these things from other people, and oftentimes people make the mistake of clinging onto one type of media specifically and centering their whole personality around it. I think we've all done this with whatever it may be. For me, it was Kanye. I became so fixated and obsessed with Kanye for several months, it's sort of embarrassing to look back on. I spend all my time watching video essays, reading analysis, browsing worst sub ever. Kanye became a whole core to my personality, until I came to the point where I realised I'd become so obsessed with one man that he'd become my entire personality, and I was just like every other Kanye dick rider. How are you going to be more cultured, open-minded and discover yourself when you spend all this time focusing on a single person who isn't yourself? It's embarrassing to admit, but I did come to my sense eventually, start listening to other music, and things just went forward. And this whole journey I went on a few years ago sent me desperately trying to indulge in as many different artists as possible, obsessively growing my taste outwards further and further, more obscure and weird as I went on, with the realisation that only consuming one person's view, or even a small pool of views, would narrow my potential scope on the world. So then, for a long time, I've wanted to dip my toes into as many movies, albums, brands, magazines, interviews, perspectives, political views, on the never-ending journey to achieve the best possible scope. Constantly trying to expand my horizons, constantly educating myself on anything I can. This thirst for enlightenment had turned into an obsession that can never be fulfilled, as there are so many different perspectives, it's simply impossible for one person to understand them all. And that's the reality. I will never understand them all. It's almost daunting when you realise the amount of art and different worldviews you haven't seen that are out there. My perspective in the present is only built on what I have indulged in the past. I can only understand and see the world through the lens of what I've experienced up to this point, which is actually totally fine. Having come to this realisation recently, it eased a lot of my anxiety around FOMO. If you don't know what FOMO is, it's the fear of missing out, which is what I was to some extent falling victim to when I was desperately trying to grow my taste. I wanted to know everything about every caveat of every artist. I wanted to learn every little detail, which is actually insanely unrealistic. In circles around art, you're often expected to be in the know. But at the same time, if you're like me, and want to be involved in lots of different circles at the same time, it's very difficult to keep up with everything. Oftentimes you will be shunned for not knowing everything in one niche, and praised for knowing more than most, which when you think about it, is odd, right? We aren't born knowing this information. There was a point where every Kanye fan wasn't a Kanye fan. Unless you're listening to the college dropout in the womb, I guess. We're all at different points in knowledge of each subject. So maybe instead of thinking less of someone for being in the exact same position you were once in, we can clue them in. All we can do for each other is teach what we do know and understand when others don't know. The funny thing about everything you know and think true is at one point you were completely oblivious. You will never be truly educated, and neither is anyone else. Avoiding being too preachy here, the only way we can all grow and understand more about the world is through others and what they have left behind. Our accelerated and easy learnings in school came as a result of centuries of research and hard work. It's impossible to see it all, but it's not impossible to leave our learnings behind in whatever way we can.